Okay, I like to talk about Greenspan.
Mm-hmm.
Many people who study his past will know that when he was getting his master's degree at Columbia University, he never earned a doctorate. Get that out of your head. He got an honorary doctor degree for his work at the central bank. In his master's work, he had a paper. It could have been his master's thesis, I'm not sure. Very likely was. But it was on the value and the role of gold for its stability factor in a banking system. And he never backed down as a central banker. He would always say, yes, you're correct. I am an advocate of gold in the banking system, but it's not relevant to my current role.
Right.
And the current role was to issue fake money to keep the banking elite in power. I heard before he became a knight to the queen, the royal, crown. I heard that he was collecting a second paycheck by Basel, Switzerland. So I concluded before the mess that he was going to preside over a breakdown. Okay, now he's coming out. When was it? 2005 that he ended his reign as king of money. Okay, he was the king of money. Okay, so he's been out for 10 years. He's now coming out with a statement that the solution. He finally gotten some jackass religion. I've been saying for 3 years that QE is not the solution, and we're avoiding the solution. The solution is the gold standard, not pre-money. The solution is gold trade settlement. It's not putting cash in consumers' pockets, which has nothing to do with capitalism. And I've been saying that the only solution will finally become the solution after they wreck the whole system and steal it blind. Now, apparently, Greenspan sees it the way Jackass did starting in 2013. Oh, well, congratulations. You're brilliant, Alan. You're brilliant. You're a little slow to the table, but that's okay because you're a banker.
Man, didn't he leave in perfect timing? 2006. I just pulled it up. 2006 was when he ended his tenure there.
Oh, it was just like Robert Rubin leaving in June of 2000, 6 months before the end of the the Clinton II administration. Robert Rubin wanted to go back to his Citigroup buddies and short the piss out of the stock market without the legal encumbrance of being the Treasury Secretary. Okay, it's the same thing. To get out of town so the collapse does not happen on their watch.
Right.
Okay, so now Greenspan is saying gold is going to be the solution for the new currency system. Okay, that has me worried to the point of having maybe an extra defecation per day. I'm usually good for one. It's before 9 a.m. I don't like a second will because it causes some discomfort.
The guy is 90, Jim. You think maybe the old man's just coming back to his old gold standard roots a little bit, his old gold bug roots? I mean, what do you think?
I think all the stem cell monthly treatments have re-energized his brain.
Yeah.
These guys have monthly stem cell treatments that re-energize their entire metabolic system and their organic functions. Okay, here's why I'm worried to the point of a second daily defecation. If we have Greenspan talking about a solution, it means that he's the mouthpiece for the Basel bankers.
Gotcha.
Who, by the way, have a large collection of gold, most of it stolen during world wars that were conjured up by the owners of their own bank. Okay, so if they're planning to have a solution of gold My guess is, again, you have to think unconventionally. They're not telling you what the plan is. They're giving you a vague, broad brush stroke. We don't know the detail. But I'm guessing that since they're trying to push for some kind of a global bond based on the IMF SDR basket of currencies, that's the special drawing right basket of currencies, namely the dollar, the euro, the pound, and the Japanese yen. Mm-hmm. They've been talking a lot about a super sovereign bond. Their definition of a super sovereign bond is that it's backed by the IMF currency. Or not backed by, but denominated in the IMF SDR currency basket. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if they're talking, if Greenspan, who's the Basel spokesman, and Basel is very close in their orientation with the IMF, they're talking about a gold currency system, they're probably going to try to do a gold backing of this basket, which now includes the Chinese RMB. And the biggest drop in the percentage weights came on the dollar to allow for the, 10 or 11% on the RMB, Chinese currency. The euro dropped some, the dollar dropped a lot, the yen dropped almost none, and the British pound dropped almost none to accommodate the 10 or 11% for the RMB. I think they're planning to do a gold-backed IMF currency from the basket. Mm-hmm. And I cannot say it'll fail. I can only say it won't be popular. And here's why I refuse to say it'll fail. There's an axiom of the Austrian School of Economics, and it says very simply, if a paper currency fails, no paper currency solution can replace it and stand as a viable solution. So if they do a gold backing, now if they just do let's just back up. Suppose they just do a super sovereign bond with the IMF currency from the basket that includes China, 5-point basket. Suppose they do a super sovereign currency and they say, this is going to replace all the different reserves across the world in the bank. It's a guaranteed failure because all the components of the basket are the same fiat paper toilet paper currencies. The dollar's supported by QE and the printing press. The euro pretty much the same with a cable line for the dollar swap to do the same thing. The Bank of England, not exactly the same, but they're I don't want to get into the differences between Japan and UK versus the euro and the dollar. The euro and the dollar are special privileges with special privileges. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if they don't do a gold backing on the super sovereign currency of the IMF, it will fail because the components have all failed. If they do a gold backing of a super sovereign currency, that is an entirely different solution, and it won't fail. I just don't expect that the Asians and the emerging market nations will touch it.
Jim, do you think that if this is the spokesman for Basel talking, and they're talking about gold, are they really going to back it with gold, or are they just looking for a way to, come up with some new digital gold backing that they can manipulate even further?
That's precisely what I was going to get to next, and it's hard to keep all these ideas down, but we were talking about this precisely before the recording began. Mm-hmm. So, good notes, good thoughts. If Basel wants to be the steward, the custodian for backing up the super sovereign bond from the IMF with gold, then Basel's vast hoards of gold would be linked to it. Mm-hmm. But then the difficult question is going to be, how do they link to it? What is the vehicle? What if say, China or Singapore decides, we've got $100 million worth of these gold-backed IMF super sovereign bonds, and we want the gold. Mm-hmm. Will they get murdered?
Well, that's just it, Jim.
That's the question.
These
I know.
they're known criminals, so we can't trust them with anything, let alone a new currency system.
Exactly. So the principal question is, will they be murdered? The second question is, will their demand for gold, for the gold-backed super sovereign IMF currency, will that demand result in them being ostracized from financial markets in some ways? Mm-hmm. Third, will they be told you will get gold credits, which will be a revival of the same rehypothecated gold concept? Mm-hmm. Okay, my guess is the Asians, the Eurasian trade zone, which is basically the old Soviet bloc minus Eastern Europe, and some of the Eastern Europeans are going to climb on, like I think Hungary is going to climb on. There will be others. It'll be slower with Bulgaria and Romania because the U.S. is trying to infest them with military right now. You know, the Russian threat.
Turkey's going to hold strong, huh?
I think Turkey's going to flip.
Yeah.
But let's get back to this point.
Okay.
If Basel is going to be running this show, they're probably going to be largely ignored by the Eurasian trade zone and emerging market nations and the BRICS and any country that has any association with the SCO, Shanghai Co-op Organization for Security and Cultural Exchange and whatever. Okay, so the entire Eastern hemisphere is probably going to say, go to hell, same old, same old. Mm-hmm. We don't trust your gold, and besides, maybe if they get delivered the gold, it will be tungsten bars.
Or covered in blood.
Covered in blood. My guess is that they're going to be issuing gold certificates out of Basel. Mm-hmm. So in order to expedite your demand for $100 million worth of gold, Mr. Singapore Central Bank, we're going to facilitate this by issuing these gold certificates that are good at your neighboring hardware store. You know, it's going to be the same old, same old. Right. You can't trust the Western bankers with money, and you certainly cannot trust them with gold because they don't give it back once they steal it. I got an interesting question this morning. Where did the Libyan gold go? Where did it move from after they killed Gaddafi?
Isn't that another one of those foundation things we weren't going to talk about?
No, it didn't go anywhere, Will. It was in the London banks, and it never moved.
It was there the whole time. It just the account number changed.
Well, the account number changed, but the owner on the account was murdered.
Right.
So the bank took it over because they didn't honor any fiduciary responsibility for inheritance. Right. Notice that after Gaddafi killed, the bankers in London came out with a statement that they had 20 requirements for the Libyan Liberation Front or whatever the hell it was. Mm-hmm. 20 requirements for the Libyan people to satisfy before the gold would be handed back. In other words, never. Okay, when they issue 20 requirements for handing back the Libyan gold, I asked the question, who's the arbiter, the trustee, who decides on satisfaction of the 20 requirements? Yep. I mean, you've got to ask these questions. You can't be a simpleton running around with a head on your shoulders that doesn't function.
Yeah, and let's just look at this from like a 30,000-foot view for a minute. So this gold was Libya's gold, the people of Libya, right, that Gaddafi was in control of or in possession of. Well, technically the London bankers were in possession of it. So if they don't satisfy these 20 requirements, the people of Libya don't get the gold back. It just stays within the London banks. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, right? We're talking kind of about a nation's treasury here almost, right? Granted, it's an African nation that's been beat up and blistered and run all over. But, right? I mean, this is the people's gold, but if they can't satisfy all these requirements to get it back from the dictator that was just killed, now it's just going to stay with the London bankers. What? Yeah. strange
Yeah,
days
well,
indeed.
you know, it's so easy to steal gold nowadays. All you got to do is kill the owner
Hmm.
or kill his lawyer.
Well, apparently you can steal gold that way. You can steal microchip companies that way too.
Yeah, well, by the way, Rothschild hired the Bush family to bring down that airplane to steal the
Well, they've got some experience in that
the
regard.
free scale chip. Yeah.
Bush family has some experience with airplanes, I'm told.
Yeah. Was it some foggy day in September of 2001?
Something like that.
Okay, so, all right. The gold solution is not going to be a solution. It's going to be a more formalized and slick version of the same paper game that they've been engaged in for quite some time. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. And I can actually throw a guy pretty far. I'm not a weakling, but I can't throw him more than 10 feet. So I can't trust him very far. we have really nasty times coming, and the solutions offered by the criminal perpetrators of the current collapse and bond fraud will not be valid. So I look for a solution coming from the East. I look to see if they're going to be coming up with, I think first it'll be a gold trade note. I'm talking about the East, the Eurasian trade zone,
Right.
Russia, China.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about them. I think they're going to start this process off by taking the new development bank from the BRICS and make a giant central bank of gold.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be for gold trade notes that manage trade payments.
And said notes, would these would these pay interest, Jim?
You know, good question. I just don't know. And although it's a good question, it might actually be somewhat relevant because we're coming from an environment where treasury bills pay nothing.
Right.
So if a treasury bill pays 0.25%, who cares if gold trade note pays nothing? Mm-hmm. It's going to be much more valuable as a guarantor.
Because of the underlying currency, yeah.
No, as a guarantor. Well, yeah. But a guarantor that the shipment will make it to port and enter the economy in the supply chain.
Right.
Okay, that has a lot of value over and above 0.25%. Okay, I don't care. The function is not to gain the interest, but they might do other things. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're managing $100 billion worth of new development BRICS bank of gold, do you think you might be able to earn some money with that?
I would hope so.
How about this? You lend out to a gold-starved nation like Argentina, and you say, we're going to lend you $10 billion worth of gold, and in return, this new development bank is going to accept a swap for copper, mm-hmm. crude oil, and maybe even uranium cakes. Mm-hmm. And that is going to involve a contract, and our brokers here in the new development bank will be taking a 3% cut.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so the swap business of commodities on gold lease provision might become a cottage industry.
Yeah, 3% of 10 billion is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I have trouble with zeros sometimes, even though I'm a mathematician. Let's not go there. But yeah, 3% of 10 billion is a lot of chicken.
It's a good fee right there.
Okay, so why would the Eastern nations, Eurasian trade zones and BRICS and emerging market nations, why would they decide that we need this phalanx to enter the ribcage of the Westerners through the gold trade note? The answer is simple. They control trade. They control industry. They control output. a remarkable backfire from outsourcing for 30 full years is that the emerging market nations and the Asian nations are wealthy with their industrial output. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're going to control what I call the trade ramps, the ports. Yeah. They're going to control them on how the payments are made. They're going to say, we don't want your stinking treasury bills, and I have a feeling that a lot of these jam-ups with lines and lines of ships that don't dump, and I don't like the word dump, that don't unload their cargo, like in Long Beach, California, mm-hmm. Why not? Is it really over a dock worker strike?
No.
Or is that a false story that they don't want treasury bills? Well, this is one of the biggest stories of our age. Yeah. It's the dollar boycott. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to have this story properly told. We're going to have to figure it out on our own. Where are treasury bills transacted? Where are jam-ups in product delivery happening? Mm-hmm. I believe it's one and the same place, the port facilities.
Interesting.
We're going to get more and more news out of this. I studied, it was over a year ago, the Long Beach strike from the dock workers, what do you call them, longshoremen. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh gosh, are they really having a big fight over fees on facility usage? What's new about that? What could be suddenly different? Are they really having a problem over the union? Well, they actually did have some problems with the unions because they weren't as active, because the global economy had turned into a recession, not as much port movement. So the dock workers were looking to get some pay increases, even though they weren't working as much. They wanted a bigger hourly increase mm-hmm. to compensate for lower hours so they'd have roughly the same paycheck. That's kind of how it worked. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was part of conflict, but I think this is much bigger, and I've gotten some flack from Contact Us, who told me, people who write through my Contact Us window of Golden Jackass, they said, no shipper would leave an Asian port without knowing exactly how they were going to be paid. And to them I replied, you're talking about a 3-week voyage during which lies could be discovered. Mm. And I'm not an expert in this, but I am pretty darn good with a Sherlock Holmes nose for corruption and lies.
Yeah.
And I think they were probably told, oh, don't worry, we won't give you treasury bonds. We'll give you better quality bonds. They won't be U.S. dollar denominated. Mm. And they get there and they say, sorry, we can't do that. But wait a minute, we just crossed the Pacific Ocean under a lie.
Yep.
Well, yeah, welcome to America, land of official lies.
So, okay. Jim, are we seeing on these principal products and goods that normally come over in these ships, are we seeing any sort of shortages? Are we seeing any sort of price increases? Is it too early to tell?
We're seeing a lot of indications that the imbalances will not continue. Here's a statistic. I may have mentioned it before on your show. It's an alarming statistic that for the full year 2015, the U.S. ports, which include the majors like Long Beach, California, Oakland, California, mm-hmm. Seattle, Washington.
Charleston. It's got to be up there.
Charleston, South Carolina. The Virginia area, mm-hmm. Chesapeake area, that's mostly military, but they've got a lot of private that's not military there. I used to go to Virginia Beach and hang out and just have some fun at the beach. Sleep in the back of my little Toyota camper. Okay, Philadelphia, yeah. New York, New Jersey. Okay, full year 2015, the U.S. shipped out 500,000 empty containers.
Holy cow.
So it's one-way traffic, Will.
Wow.
And that cannot stand.
That's incredible.
So do we have any indications? Yes, we have indications primarily at Walmart. Walmart is the greatest example to display the shortage concept.
Okay.
Because they've got some efficiencies. Mm-hmm. their method of inventory replenishment is closely tied with cash management.
Okay.
Now, remember about 10 or 15 years ago, there was a big wave, new concept. Oh, this is really cool as hell. Just-in-time inventory methods.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Using advanced software, operations research optimization, shorter lines for delivery, smaller warehouses to hold the product, because the longer you hold it in a warehouse, the more money you lose, the smaller your profit margin.
Smaller capital requirements across the board.
So Walmart is unique. They stood out in the 90s as the #1 supply chain efficiency engine in all of the retail sector in the United States. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I went to an annual meeting where the speaker was the Chief Information Officer of Walmart when I was at Staples. It was fascinating. It was the only annual meeting speaker that I witnessed, who was really, really interesting. I went, every year. It was a good excuse. You don't have to work this afternoon unless you've got something really pressing. You can go, just a mile and a half away. There's a big conference center, and you can go see the annual meeting for Staples. Oh, sure, let's go. They might have some free food. And it was also an opportunity to check out. Staples had a lot of younger employees, and some of them wore dresses. Okay, so it was a good little eye candy session, and I didn't have a lot of friends in Staples. I had 3 or 4, because Staples was a different place. I don't want to get into the whole description. They had little functions that worked extremely well, and there was good interrelation, but it was a little different. It wasn't exactly cloistered with pockets, but I didn't have a lot of friends in, say, accounting. I ate lunch with a few. It was a different kind of place. It was a unique Harvard MBA center. But the point was, Walmart has a very tight, just-in-time cash management system funding their supply chain. Therefore, they're the most vulnerable during a recession to see empty shelves.
Yep.
And we're starting to see it. I remember seeing pictures of Target, the retail center, with empty shelves. I get pictures occasionally from clients, and they really like to show the 280-pound woman with her G-string underwear showing above the sweatpants that are size 46. They like to show those pictures, but they also send me pictures of the shelves at Walmart, and they've got some minor problems right now, and I think it's going to get a lot worse. Okay, why do I mention the Eastern Hemisphere and the producers using the trade payment system as their phalanx, which is a military term, a pointed group of army infantry that penetrate. Yeah, okay, that's called a phalanx. Why do I mention trade? Because it's what the East controls. The East does not control the banks. They don't control the SWIFT. They don't control the gold. The East controls trade. So they're going to make sure that they get paid in the form they want, or they won't deliver. And the form they want will be gold trade notes. Okay, then what? Then they're going to take their gold trade notes and convert them into gold. If you've got a bunch of surplus and it's no longer in treasuries and it's gold trade notes of the same, say, 90-day duration or 6-month duration, they're going to start redeeming them in what they're backed in. So a nation that has a trade surplus, like, say, let's just say Bangladesh. I don't really know that they have a surplus, but I do know that they have treasury bonds in their reserves, so that's usually a sign that they accumulate. Okay, if they own a bunch of gold trade notes, they're going to start converting some of them. They're not going to convert all of them because they're going to use other trade notes to buy other things, like from South American nations, to sustain their Bangladesh economy. But they're going to start converting them into gold. And what are they going to do with their gold but put them in their banks, in their reserves for their banking system, and get rid of the U.S. dollar-based treasury bills, treasury bonds. Okay, so maybe eventually you're going to be seeing some very big news that certain nations that sell oil would prefer payment in gold trade notes. And you're going to see a big push in the whole concept of the gold trade notes. And that's going to be a happy day for the gold investors, because that would mean 2 of the 3 tripod legs would be fulfilled. You'd have gold satisfying in trade payments. You'd have gold satisfied in reserves for banking systems. And the only thing lacking will be gold-backed currencies.
Yep.
And that is what kills the Western bankers. Because the gold currencies mean the dollar is not used anymore.
And we'll see that last, you think? That'll be the last peg of the tripod.
Yeah, but things I think could move very quickly. Once they get penetration with gold trade notes, it just goes immediately into the banking systems, and it's a matter of accumulating, and then the observers of the system and what's happening will make conclusions. We need to diversify out of these treasuries. The U.S. treasuries are going to be going the way of the dodo bird, going to be entering into the annals of a chapter that displays the most corrupt in the modern history of mankind currency, namely the dollar.
Yep.
When we got off the gold standard, it opened the door to become the most corrupt currency in the history of mankind.
And boy, has it.
And when you have lots of countries like South Korea, I love that example. They're not a major power in Asia, but they are a big export power. They're big in the shipping industry, and they're having tremendous problems now in the shipping industry in Korea, South Korea. The Koreans are going to say, we've got X billion dollars worth of U.S. treasuries. We need to get rid of a quarter of them right away and buy gold.
Right.
Or put a big chunk into the gold central new development bank for the BRICS.
Right.
You're eventually going to see the new development bank for the BRICS take on other contributors besides the BRICS 5 nations.
Right.
And now we're unfortunately seeing a state of flux for Brazil. I'm not sure where they're going to go. I don't want to get into a long discussion here, but Dilma Rousseff is under challenge now, under an impeachment challenge for unseating her, and the U.S. is all over this, running the anti-corruption campaign with their own favorite sons as candidates to continue, and it's getting extremely messy. It's called the car wash corruption case. Apparently that's just the visible head of a bunch of corruption that reaches into Petrobras, their national oil company. And I'm very curious whether Russia and China are going to get any of the oil contracts out of Petrobras when they open the bidding to foreign contractors. Okay, so back to the concept. We're going to see, I think, other contributors into the BRICS New Development Bank. And why would that be? So they have the gold on hand to guarantee their trade notes. Because that way they wouldn't have to lease anything. That way they might have a lower fee. It could be that these gold trade notes will involve a fee for countries that don't have any deposits at the New Development Bank, which I'm calling the BRICS Gold Central Bank. I don't buy the name of New Development Bank. If that's the case, then why is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank around? Isn't that for development? If you got a different development bank, then what happened to the bank that you call the development bank? It's the Gold Central Bank for the Eurasian Trade Zone. That's what it's going to become. Well, that is what I believe. And, the climax event is going to be, what we hinted to before, the Germans coming up with a new trade zone, And when you're landlord of a trade zone, you like to be landlord of the currency.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want some carpet-bagging asshole out of London telling you how to run things.
Well, half of the business of trade is the receipt, right?
Right, and you want to control your own financial function.
Sure.
And the Germans are way ahead of the game here. They own a lot of great technology.
Mm-hmm.
They own a lot of great industry. And now they're managers of the Frankfurt China RMB Hub Center. It's going to rival the British. And the existence of the Frankfurt, Germany-based RMB hub could have scared the bejesus out of the British in order to motivate this vote, which apparently was sanctioned by their elite.
Interesting.
Now, just because there were a lot of financial losses associated with the day after the vote doesn't mean the elite were involved in the losses. Most losses go to Tom, Dick, and Harry nitwits.
Yeah.
Which we call the sheeple.
Well, if the elite were behind it, if the elite were pushing for the vote, then they knew what would happen, and they probably, shorted the. They did the opposite of those bozo trades that Euroraj was talking about.
Yeah.
Jim, let's talk about localized disruptions. If you're ready for it, when the shoe falls, we've already got trade routes backing up. We've got treasury bills, treasury bonds being refused in international payment. What happens when there are disruptions? Before the call, I talked to you. We mentioned water and electricity specifically. We just talked about Walmart and how they are the king of just-in-time delivery systems, and how Walmart, probably along with every other food, outfit, retailer, distributor's shelves will be dry in a matter of days. What do you see? What do you see with other services as it pertains to dollar trade as well?
I've given this a lot of thought because I'm not living in an American country. I'm not living in the United States. They object to that kind of phrase. They say, well, you are an American country. You're in Central America. Yeah, right. And they call us gringos. They call us Norte Americanos.
Yeah.
They don't just. I said, is a Canadian a Norte Americano? And they say, yeah. And I said, is he a gringo? And he said, he can be if he's an asshole. I love that. I heard that a few times. Anyway, okay, I've given this a lot of thought because not being in my home country, I feel vulnerable. And it doesn't matter that I've got residents here. I feel vulnerable. I can't, bang on a big office door and say, I want action. I'm a citizen. No, all I can say is, soy contribuyente. I am a taxpayer. Yep. I'm a contributor. Okay, fine. I pay my Social Security. It's so funny. I pay $23 a month in Social Security. Okay? That's what I pay here. How much do you pay in the United States?
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do I get here? Well, don't worry about the fact that I get near nothing. You get nothing in the United States either.
Yeah, it just costs you less.
See? Okay. Now, I've given this a lot of thought. And why? Because I am concerned that when shit hits the fan, I might not have provisions. So I've got some cash in my closet. I'm looking at them right now. I've got about 20 cans of tuna. And believe it or not, this is not exaggerated. I've got over 220 jugs of water. I buy a 2-liter orange juice bottle. It's made of plastic. And in 3 or 4 days, it's gone. And I don't throw it away. I clean it. I mean, I don't use soap and water and, put it through the... I just rinse it 3 or 4 times with some water. And I fill it up with water again and cap it after I let the bubbles... And I could go take a look at them, but I'd go out of range on my headset here. I've got 15 rows of almost 20 of these bottles. And just in the last few months, I've noticed Walmart sells discounted Oh, they're big. They're like 2.5 liters. They're very big. I get grape juice for, oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. It's like under $3 for a big, I think it's close to a gallon. Anyway, I get great prices at Walmart, and now I've got about 25 of those bottles because I refuse to throw them away. And a friend of mine said, Jim, if you got an old bottle of water and it's over, I've got several that are 2 years old. He said you might have some bacteria accumulation in there. You might want to recycle, rinse them out, and put new water in. Start with your back row. Okay, I'm worried about water. I'm worried about tuna.
Yep.
I have other cans of what we call frijoles.
Yep.
They're brown beans, and they're great. I get the molida, the mulled black beans, brown beans. It's kind of like a pureed. What do you call it? Mashed potatoes, except it's beans.
It's like refried beans, right?
They're refried beans. I don't like the word refried because it means
the mashed up.
Yeah. Refried sounds to me like you're going to fry them a second time. Right. No, that's not what it means.
Right.
Okay, they're brown beans and they're mashed and they're ready. You just open it up and you eat them. Okay, that's called survival.
Yeah.
Okay, I have. This is funny, but I have to do things like check my tuna and notice the fecha de vince. The expired date is not this month. So I'm about to take a bunch of them that I bought 1.5 years ago. I'm about to eat them or give them to my lady friend for her family.
Yeah.
And just say, here's six cans of tuna. Have fun. Yeah. And they make a big tuna casserole and they put some pasta in it, put some vegetables, and they call it a meal. And they love it. I mean, I'm a fan favorite from the families to gals that I have fun with. Okay, so let's get back to the point at a higher level. Okay, I like to focus in Costa Rica what provisions in the supermarkets and stores rely on the dollar in order to arrive. That is the quintessential question. The answer is razor blades, detergents and cleansers, many home care products like tooth floss, toothbrushes. They have native soap. Don't worry about soap, therefore. Okay, it gets much nastier when you get to the bigger items. Car parts, almost all imported. Gasoline, I think it's 100% imported.
Wow.
Diesel, 100% imported. But some of the import comes from Nicaragua. So you have to be cognizant of supply from neighbor countries that might work out a deal that's not necessarily dollar denominated.
Right.
Okay, the point of this little lesson is that whatever is dollar dependent in the supply chain will be quickly put at risk. We might have, for instance, in Costa Rica, car parts and tire shortages.
Yeah.
And a lot of hubbub and objections about it. Why is this happening?
Oh, yeah.
The answer will be simple. Because we let the Americans control our banking system.
Well, hopefully the world, hopefully the world doesn't blame Americans. I mean, we could go down in history as just a hated bunch once this all settles, because your unsuspecting friends in Costa Rica, your locals, your ticos, for the most part, aren't going to have any idea what hit them and why their life is.
I know. I've tried to talk to a few ticos, and they go, "I don't really understand what you're saying."
Yeah.
Won't it affect all the stores or none of the stores? I said, no. It'll affect what's dollar, what is paid for in dollars to come in here.
Yeah,
and
hopefully.
Well, that's an interesting point. Let me think about that. Let me think about it another few weeks.
Right. Yeah, hopefully the images of the idiotic crowds, clamoring for Obama won't be the image of Americans that is held in the minds of people around the world after this goes up in flames.
What I've learned, this has been a very big point in my own thought process, Will. I'm glad you brought it up. I've tested this with some of the locals. I've got some decent Spanish. I'm not fluent by any means. Every year my percentage fluency goes up a little bit more. I'm somewhere around 65, 70% fluent. I make improvements all the time. I have some really long conversations sometimes, and it's a good practice. But I require that they speak slowly and not use too much pachuco. That's slang. I can use a little slang, and they giggle like little girls when I use slang. But what I've tested is this. If there's a problem with the dollar, and a lot of the elites here find that they've lost money in their dollar accounts, and that's a very popular defensive measure here among the rich caste. In the 90s, they made 5 and 8% per year on their dollar accounts until around 2005. It stopped at a certain level that represented roughly a 75% loss of the native currency here over about a 15-year or 12-year period. Okay, I asked the question, if there's a dollar problem here, do you think that the gringos here will be blamed? And the answer I keep getting back is so plain and so easy to understand. No, your government will be blamed, but you will be robbed.
Yeah, that is, God, that.
You're going to be the target on the street. They walk up to, show a knife, and say, "Give me your watch." And I'm going to tell them, you can have 18 hairs where the watch would be because I don't got one. And then they'll say, "Give me your cell phone." And then it's gone. No, they're going to rob the gringos and enter the neighborhoods where the gringos have a higher percentage.
Sure.
Okay, here is my plan. This is getting off the point a little bit. It's kind of interesting. I've been looking into buying, even on a time allotted basis, make payments and add up, finally move in. I've been looking into a condominium complex with a modest 2.5 bedroom facility. It's about, a few miles, I don't want to give it away. It's a few miles out of town.
Yeah.
And in the hills. The hills are kind of nice here. I mean, you get a little more rain at times because the clouds don't pass over without dumping their moisture. Sorry about the sirens here. I like the hills because the air is fresher. Imagine living 4 miles out of town, being able to take a bus to get into town for a mere 45 cents, and go about the business of the day, meet some friends, have a meal. 4 hours pass, and you head back before rush hour, back into the hills, where you got perfectly fine broadband internet. And the condos would be going for anywhere between $110,000 and $140,000 for a 2.5 bedroom place, and a nice common swimming pool where there are a remarkable number of svelte types sunning themselves. Okay, that's a nice plan because the magic is to be 3 or 4 miles out of the town. If there are roving gangs of angry young men bearing machetes, they're not going to be going to a spot 3 miles out. Right. They're going to be going to the rich area, kind of close to Embassy Row, where there are big apartment buildings that are 70% gringo. Yeah. And I asked a direct question to the developer and his salesman at this one complex. I go to this complex every few months to check its construction progress and ask more questions. I asked this one question back in about a year ago. What is your percentage of gringos among your sales? And he told me, well, we've sold about 40 so far, and we have 0 gringos. But we have 1 European. I said, where's he from? He said, Belgium, Belgica. I said, oh, okay. Okay, so one europeo y ningún gringos. See? Okay, now I went back in April to the same spot, and I said, how many gringos do you have? And he said, well, we've sold about 110 or 120, and we have 2 gringos. I said, how many Europeans? And he said, oh, we got a few, maybe 4 or 5. Okay, so it seems like twice as many Europeans as gringos, and not many. We're talking about under 10%, way under 10%. Okay, the machete-bearing young men looking to rob and get by, make some money, put some food on the table to their families by whatever means, they ain't going to go out to those suburbs. I like living with the natives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, if you're not in a crummy area, living with the natives is safe. If you're living in a crummy area, you're going to get robbed. Mm-hmm. So I like living in a place that has a guard. It's a top requirement for the gringos here in San Jose. If you don't live in a place that has a guard, you're in trouble. But I got one funny story to tell. It was a guy I met, and he was from Rohrmoser. It's a little suburb in San Jose. Rohrmoser. It's a German name. Rohrmoser. Rohrmoser. They just call Rohrmoser. They don't pronounce it right. They don't say Rohrmoser. They say Rohrmoser. Rohrmoser. I live in Rohrmoser. Okay, I had a friend living in Rohrmoser, and he was my first friend here. Okay, something happened. I met this guy, and I said, how safe is Rohrmoser these days? He said, well, not very good. I'm having to move because about 10 out of 15 different units of our condominiums got robbed the same day in an afternoon. I said, how did that happen? I said, let me guess. You've got one guard at a little shack, and he's a Tico, and you don't pay him shit.
Yep.
He said, how'd you know? I said, they give him $100, tell him to get lost, they're going to rob the place. In come 2 big moving vans, and they move out all the furniture, the televisions, the computers, and the refrigerators.
Yep.
They leave the stoves alone because they don't want to disconnect them. All you have to do is unplug a refrigerator. So the guy said, I got to find a new place to move. And I said, how much do you think they paid the guard? And he said, well, it could have been 100, could have been 200, I don't know. I said, do you think the lesson is that if you don't pay a guard properly, you get robbed anyway? And he said, yeah, absolutely.
I think the other lesson is to hide your gold in the stove.
Well, you don't want it to get melted down.
Then the chicken melt.
No, it wouldn't. You need 2,000 degrees,
yeah.
not the 400 or 450.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm very concerned about the supply chain. And what I think is going to happen in the United States is that since